Good morning, everybody. It's great to see you. My name's Grace. Welcome to Bruce City this morning. I'm glad that we get to worship together. Glad that you made your way in here this morning. I was able to put up the banner for the Christmas services, and I was out there, my hands were really cold, and I was like, man, I remember just like doing this every year. And last year we didn't have the service in here, and it was just kind of bringing back all the memories of the Christmas Eve service. You'll hear more about that in the service today, but I'm just excited about this season and the things that we get to do that we haven't been able to do in so long, the things that just carry those memories and those just cherished moments of what this season brings, what it reminds us of. And in thinking through that, I was also very much reminded of the fact that some of us really look forward to this season and some of us don't. Some of us find a lot of pain in this season. Some it's stressful, either interacting with families or just whatever. There's lots of things that bring pain in this season. And so I just want you to know that wherever you find yourself in this time, that you are welcome here and that we get to just engage together in what it looks like. And even as we start with these first songs, just declaring peace of what it looks like to say, we long, Jesus, for your peace. We long for what it means to celebrate and be in awe of who you are, but then also to recognize the peace and the intimacy and the relationship of what you bring. So would you stand with us? And God, I just ask that as we sing familiar songs, as we are reminded of memories from Christmases before, or whether they're painful or exciting, Jesus, I just ask that you would bring your peace, that you would help us to delight in who you are and your whole story, what you're doing from beginning to end. We jump in and enter with you. Thank you, Jesus, for all that you're doing. Yeah. Let's sing this together. me, this doesn't happen that often, but it does happen sometimes. God rest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. Remember Christ our Savior was born on Christmas Day to save us all from Satan's power when we were gone astray. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy. Oh, comfort and joy. From God our Heavenly Father, a blessed angel came, and unto certain shepherds brought tidings of the same, how that in Bethlehem was born the Son of God by name. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy. Comfort and And when they came to Bethlehem, where our dear Savior lay, they found him in a manger, where oxen feed on hay. His mother Mary kneeling down unto the Lord did pray. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy. Comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Lord Jesus, we long for more and more of your comfort and joy. God, I just even think of that verse, simple words that we've heard so many times. They found him in a manger, where oxen feed on hay. Jesus, this place where you chose to come, the divine, to enter in through the most fragile way. You bring peace, you bring comfort. Thank you, Jesus, for all that we get to settle into as we take everything that we face, everything that we're dealing with, and then we get to rest in you, Jesus, our Messiah, King above all, baby in a manger. Thank you, Jesus. Amen. Amen. You can have a seat.
Well, good morning. Welcome to Bruce City in this Christmas season, third Sunday of Advent. Glad you've decided to join us for this day. If Advent and the Advent season is not familiar to you, hopefully we can, even through the beginning of our service here this morning, help you familiarize or be familiarized with that. But we're glad you're here and decided to join us. It's crazy nice weather for Wisconsin, is it not? So really nice to be able to share this time with you. You know, we've been talking through, speaking of Advent, the last 2 weeks we talked and lit the hope and the peace candle, and today is joy, and the joy candle is what we're going to be looking at. And as I was thinking about just a few thoughts to get us introduced to this morning, I went back to this last Tuesday evening, and our home church was meeting, and my wife Shelley led us through a time there where we were talking, among other things, about reflecting on our own Christmas memories around a few words. And some of those words were the words of Advent that we're in with the candles this year. And as we're talking about that. And so we were just kind of sitting in silence and then allowing the Holy Spirit to speak to us after she just gave a very simple prompt. And she said, Christmas memories, and then said joy. And all that could come into my mind was my dad, because he passed away just this last September. And started thinking about the fact that he won't be celebrating with us this year. It won't be about this Christmas season. But the word that was immediately following that, inexplicably, I think for most, was joy in the midst of that. And as I thought to the words I said at his memorial, as I thought about today, as I thought even about Christmas, this whole idea of joy is something that just continued to flood into my mind regarding this. Not happiness, but joy, which is a very, very different thing. And as I thought about this a little bit more, the words in Luke 2, verse 10 came to my mind. Evangelisomai imin harar megalin. Oh, what is that, right? Okay, here's in English. I'll give you the whole verse of Luke 2:10. But the angel said to them, do not be afraid, for see, I am bringing you good news of great joy for all the people. So the little Greek lesson I gave you there for a moment was the angel basically saying this, I evangelical you joy great. Now, if you've been around much, you know that that word has got some baggage with it these days. But that's the word. That's the word we see there. And it's a word having to do with good news or gospel or whatever thing you want to put in there. But it's associated with this idea of great joy. So despite all this misapplication of this that we hear these days, what we see here is that this is applied because we know that good news of great joy was applied to what? For unto you is born this day, right? It's applied to Jesus. And the truth is, Jesus in his way and his person, and even his resurrection, which makes it all worthwhile, is what that word has to do with. And what joy has to do with. Our only source of joy. And so I just ask you in this Christmas season, as you think of things like good news, of great joy in that, recognize and realize that it's only going to be wrapped around the person of Jesus, ultimately, as a source. It's not going to be wrapped around life pursuit and the pursuit of happiness. It's going to be around joy, which is a very different thing because it involves him and this good news, this evangel, if you will. So ask, and I ask you to consider in this morning even, just all these different aspects of that word joy, even as we sing the song in just a few minutes, having to do with joy as well. So I'm going to light the joy candle, and Mary Ann Sander, one of our home church pastors, is going to read some other thoughts on the word joy as well as I light it.
So, where can we find joy in a world that cannot recognize the hope and peace that Christ provides? The answer, I think, lies within the question itself. Though in our world we see destruction, caused by wealth and power's seduction. The rumor making rounds, earth poor, is that in our own midst, a Savior has been born. And this truth that we've been told is neither fraction nor refraction, but rather a course of action, which will truly set us free. For this child whose birth among the lowly has come to level the highest of hills and raise from the depths the deepest of valleys. His entrance, the rallying cry of the poor and disenfranchised. His residence, reserved for only those the world despised. And for this, we now rejoice, for the Son of God, the King of Kings. Your presence is the greatest gift we can ever hope to receive. So, how else can we respond now but with joy, if not with hope and dancing and laughter? For our world will be forever changed hereafter.
Amen. Would you guys stand? Let's sing together.
Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing. Joy to the earth, the Savior reigns. Let men their songs employ, while fields and floods, rocks, hills and plains repeat the sounding joy, repeat the sounding joy, repeat the sounding joy. No more lessons and sorrows grow, nor thorns infest the ground. He comes to make his blessings flow, far as the curse is found, far as the curse is found, far as the curse is found. He rules the world with truth and grace, and makes the nations prove the glories of his righteousness, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love.
Jesus, for all the wonders of your love. And thank you that we keep being continuously in awe of what your love actually means and what it looks like. I thank you what that means for us when we get to just have the life desire and goal to be to share your love with everybody around, and how vast that can look, how different that can look. So I ask that you just continue to keep igniting something in us that says, whoa, that is Jesus' love. Oh, that is his love. Oh, that's his love. And we start to name it and see it all around us. Would you open our eyes to see your love, your joy, your hope all around us? Thank you, Jesus. Amen. Amen. You can have a seat.
All right, let's keep reflecting on those thoughts surrounding the word joy as we continue to meet this morning. Well, just a few announcements I want to share with you today of things that are happening here at Bruce City. As Grace alluded to earlier, things are a little more back on track with what we are used to than what had happened last year, right? And so as we just look at some of the events coming up, I just want to share a few of those with you here this morning. The first one is this coming Friday, December 17th. We're doing something called Under the Stars. And this will be a time that reflects a little bit on something we did last year, but it's going to be a little different as well, but at the same location, if you remember where that was, if you were there. But it's going to be in New Berlin at our good friends Bob Turner and Diane Wonder's home, and it'll be in their backyard, and we'll have worship and singing of Christmas carols, hot cocoa, all of the stuff. So we're really hoping that you'll take the time to come and be there with us. That's this coming Friday, the 17th. 6:30 p.m. So we hope to see you there. Please inquire if you need directions or anything like that, and also check your email. I think some of that will be in there. Also, what would be coming up this month, Christmas Eve service. So if you're new with us here at Bruce City at Christmas time, we don't do Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, but we do Eve. Only place I know that does this, that I've ever heard of. The 23rd. It'll be right here in this room, here at our building. It's going to be just a great evening. We encourage you to bring family and friends and just really enjoy this night together. That's also going to be starting at 6:30, just like the Friday service that'll be coming out in the backyard there on this Friday, on the 17th. And I guess, we should also mention the 26th, which is 2 weeks from today. We are going to be doing a Sabbath Sunday on that particular day. So please do not take the time to come here to the building on the 26th, because you will be alone. We hope you can spend some time with your family on that Sunday, or just enjoying a Sabbath. And then lastly, we're continuing to be grateful, as we're coming to the close of the year, for the giving of all of you. And we just so appreciate how you support what happens here at Bruce City Church, and we thank you so much for that. You will notice, if you've been around here in the past, we're not doing an end-of-year giving campaign per se, but that does not mean, and you are free to inquire what our budget needs are as we close out this year, as there is a bit of a shortfall we're experiencing, and so any gifts in that regard will, of course, be really appreciated as we head into the end of this year. And we just thank you again for your continued giving in that way, and ask you to inquire if you would like more information about that. So now for something really special, and I think they're going to be showing up on the screen here in just a moment. Are we there? Yes. So you might be wondering who these folks are, and some of you know them very well. Give them a hand. Yes. Well, I should tell you for those that don't know. This is Lucio and Amanda Gaijo. Hey, guys. It's great to see you. They're coming to us live from Connecticut. Now, what are they doing there? So these folks are church partners of ours. They are part of a sister church that Bruce City has had for about a decade now. And so it's really been an amazing experience, and we've had an amazing partnership with these guys for many years. There's well over 30 people from the Bruce City family who have gone to Salta, Argentina, and have visited them. They have been here 3, 4, 5 times. Other members of their church and family have been here as well. These are dear, not just partners, but dear friends and family of ours. And so it's so great to see them here and to be able to do a little interview with them, because they have a little bit of big news going on right now. And so we want to just take a few moments to be able to share some time in an interview with them, which I'm going to try to do right from here, okay? So, hey guys, can we hear you?
Hi, how are you?
Hi, guys. Hi, everybody.
We miss you a lot and we love you, Bruce City Church.
All right. So great to see you. So Felices Navidades and Merry Christmas and all the things, right?
Amen.
Okay. Well, what is some of the biggest news you guys have that you would want to share with us right now? I think it might have to do with something happening in about, I don't know, 10 or 11 days, something like that. What is it?
8 days. Well, first, thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your love and your support. Like Randy said, we are ready to come back to Argentina. It was a little fast, so we had 8 days, and we are returning to Argentina. We had a mix of feelings, because one of our goals was be in Bruce City before we left the state, but well, God knows, and but thank you so much, and pray for us. In the 20th, we are leaving to Argentina.
The 20th. All right. Now, what some of us might not realize here is you have been in the U.S. for over 2 years. And when you first came back, you did come to Bruce City. So those of you that remember that here, that's how long they've been in the U.S., because a little thing called the coronavirus hit, among other things, right?
Yes.
So, but we are really excited for your opportunity to go back home. Tell us about what's happening down in Salta right now at the church.
Well, like maybe if you read our news, you will know this. For us, the 2020 was the best year for our ministry in Argentina. The church grew a lot of people that start to come in, and many things in the building they made, and God is doing great things. We are ready now to come back, because one of our goals is to start a new church in July. So we have people, maybe you remember Lucas or Clavijos or David, they are doing very good and growing and doing a great thing.
That's amazing. Amazing to hear that. So what you guys should know is these guys do not just pastor and lead and have others that help lead the one church in Salta, but their vision is as church planters in the city of Salta. And this is a couple of them now that they've already been a part of. So, wow, we really appreciate your guys' vision, and we're happy to be able to be in partnership with you guys being able to do that. So what's life been like back here for you, Amanda, back in the U.S.? Lucio kind of visiting for a while. What sort of things happened in this last 2 years?
Well, like Lucio said, I don't think it was ever in our plans to stay here this long, but it was obviously part of God's plans. So we haven't, like you guys might know, we're not the type of people to stay still or or take vacations. So we saw it as an opportunity to be able to serve the Lord here, which is something new, nothing that we ever thought of. Actually, right now we're in a new church plant, a Hispanic church in Providence, Rhode Island, that we've been helping out for the past few months. So it's been exciting to see this church start up and the vision that they have, the pastor here and his wife, and help them and be able to be part of what God's doing here, preaching the gospel, which is something that is truly our passion to do. Seeing people come and realize how much they need a savior and how God just changed their lives. It's amazing to be a part of that. And well, the family's doing good. The girls, when they first came, you might remember, they spoke very little English, and now they speak no Spanish. Well, at least that's what they say. They act as if they don't understand. They say, "What? What?" but
So, how
but
old are Madison and Melissa right now?
so when we came, they were what? Madison was 2 and Melissa was 4. Yes.
Yes.
And now they're 7.
No, 5.
Yeah, now they're 7. I mean 8 and 5 now.
Wow.
Madison just turned 5 December 10th, so it's exciting to see that. And well, we also have a huge surprise. Lucio's mom is actually with us. Nora.
Woo. Nice.
She came about what, maybe a month ago?
Yeah, maybe.
Probably about that. So she's been helping us out with this whole process of packing and getting things ready for our trip back to Argentina.
Okay.
She told our church in Salto that she came to come get us.
Okay. Much needed, much needed. Well, as we close this out, thank you again so much for spending this time with us this morning, and so good to be able to share you with everyone that's here in service this morning. What's the number one thing that you would want to ask us to be in prayer with you guys about as this time is coming and as you're getting ready to go back to Salta?
Well, we spent like you say, Randy, we spent like 2 years here. It was not our plan, and many things in Argentina changed in these 2 years, you know. So that's a little, for us, it's a little, we feel like a little nervous about that. But the good thing is God, it's the same. He never changed. So pray for that and pray for our summer camp. We have summer camp in 3 weeks, one for a young adult, kids, children, and another one with teens. That will be in January 17. So pray for that, and and pray for us. We are excited to come back.
Okay, okay. Well, that's great. We will remember you in that way. Y, Lucio, tú practicas tu inglés un poco, huh? You practice your English a little bit. He sounds pretty good, doesn't he? All right. Well, thanks so much, you guys. Appreciate you taking this time out to be with us, and have a Merry Christmas. Can we all wave and maybe give them a hand?
We love
I'll
you
spin it
guys.
around. There, you can see each other. All right. Thanks, you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a
Bye-bye.
Merry Christmas. We love
Merry
you.
Christmas.
Bye-bye.
Well done, Shmore. Good morning, friends. Is my mic not on, Scott? We got some moving parts. It is on, see? Let's hear it for our sound and slide and tech guys. We got Scott and Eagle, Elliot, Grace. These guys are incredible. If you walked into awkward technical difficulties, it's because this is a situation here in this 118-year-old building. All right, while Randy walks around and gets things in order, I'm going to pray. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, so many things going on this morning. Reflecting on these words that we've said over and over again that we hear in Charlie Brown's Christmas. I have news that will bring great joy for all the people. We're living in light of Emmanuel, of the incarnation, of God with us. We get to dive into Matthew 7, divine words spoken out of a human body, inviting us into more, inviting us into life, inviting us into love. And those things sound really wonderful, but they're really challenging, Jesus. It's hard to live in the way of love. It's hard to choose life sometimes. And so would you come and again invite us into more? Would you use this time not just to be an end in and of itself, but to push us and pull us, invite us into depth, into more, into maturity, to transformation in our lives, our everyday lives. So we love what you do. We love the good work that you're doing in us. Every single one of us, just so you know, if you came here and you feel far from God, feel like you don't belong, feel more shame than welcome, you belong. God is at work in ways that you never imagined. So thank you, Jesus, for that work. We give ourselves to it and to you in Jesus' name. Amen. Also, welcome those of you who are watching online. Good to be with you and share this time with you. For those of you who are new, welcome. We've been in the sermon series that we've been calling The Way of Jesus. And in this sermon series called The Way of Jesus, there's two halves of it, and today we're ending the first half. The first half, we've been going through the Sermon on the Mount. In the second half, we're going to be going through the parables of Jesus. I just felt like let's spend a good long time with Jesus. I mean, how many voices do you have in your head? How many media engagements do you encounter on a daily basis? How many articles do you read? What do you listen to? How many podcasts, news outlets? We live in a noisy world. And we've just wanted to sit at the feet of Jesus and listen. And so we started the Sermon on the Mount on July 18th in McKinley Park under the trees. And here in the third week of Advent, we come to the very end of the Sermon on the Mount, the first half of this Way of Jesus sermon series. And the text that we have this morning is a text that's been, unfortunately, just trivialized. It's a text that I sang over and over and over again in Sunday school. And it's been turned into a Sunday school lesson, but friends, the text, this little couple of verses that we have to finish off the Sermon on the Mount, they are very challenging. And that's a word that I've said over and over again in this series, isn't it? I probably said the word challenging just short of the word Jesus in this sermon series because the Sermon on the Mount and Jesus himself he's a challenging dude. He's not content to leave us as we are. So Jesus brings this challenge to us. And now what we're going to do today, I'm going to make things awkward. We're going to do something that I feel is awkward. And some of you will feel that as well. No, I'm not going to have us sing The Wise Man Built His House Upon a Rock in unison. But we're going to do something that I resist. Sometimes Shelley, Grace, others on staff will be like, we should hear from one another a little bit. And I'm like, no, that sounds like cruel and unusual punishment, having an open mic time. I hate that stuff. If this is your first time, this is unusual. I apologize. But all week, I've been kind of feeling, as I pondered this text and thought about how we're coming to the end of the Sermon on the Mount, I've just had this thought, I just want to hear from one another. What have we been learning in the Sermon on the Mount? What's challenged us in particular in this epic teaching of Jesus? What's encouraged us? What have we been reminded of? What did we see for the first time in a new way that's kind of was revolutionary to us? How have we been learning and being challenged and growing in Jesus through the Sermon on the Mount? So I'm gonna walk through the whole Sermon on the Mount in hopefully like 7 minutes or less. And then as I talk, I'm going to just try to be sparking some memories, and then Randy Schmore will run around with the microphone and we can share just like 30 seconds. We don't need 14 sermons, but I'd just like to hear from you. So we started out the Sermon on the Mount on July 18th, and we actually started out in Matthew 4 thinking about the crowds that were following Jesus. And the crowds that were following Jesus mean something. If you look at the end of Matthew 4, it said great crowds were following Jesus, and where these people were from are something that we slide over real easy and don't pay attention to, but it matters. See, because Jesus had all sorts of different people following him at this point. Jesus, it said there were people from Jerusalem, so that means there were people who were kind of like the bougie religious elite of their day. They lived in the right place, and when it came to their religious practices, they did the right things in the right places. They had the temple, and they had all the important people were front and center in their world. The people who lived in Jerusalem felt like the best kind, the right kind of religious people, the right kind of Jewish people. It was like they came from the most famous and the fastest growing megachurch there was right now. These were the bougie elite. Then you had people from Galilee, which means that they were kind of, the people from Jerusalem would look at Galileans, which Jesus was, by the way, as kind of country hicks. They're backwoods cousins that they spoke in a different dialect, they had a different accent, and they were dirty, they were rural, and they were kind of second-class Jewish people, looked down upon. This is why people said, Jesus, this guy's from Nazareth, and you think he's the Messiah? Give me a break. Then it said he had people from the Decapolis, which is this 10-city little area, an area of 10 cities, Greek cities within Judea, within this larger Jewish area. And these Greek cities meant that they were Gentiles, and they had their own Greek gods. They had these idols filling their houses. And what this also meant was that these bougie religious elite and then these Jewish people from the country in Galilee would have wanted nothing to do with these Greek people who are following Jesus, but they just can't get enough of him. What this tiny little text in Matthew 4 is telling us is that Jesus is attracting all sorts of people. The people are coming together because of Jesus, and it seems like he likes it that way. Then Jesus begins this epic teaching in Matthew 5, and he begins saying things that you'd never expect from a Messiah, from God in a million years. He starts saying weird things like, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the poor in spirit. You guys who walked in here today feeling like I don't have my stuff together. I'm so far from having it all figured out. I feel like I'm a step away from just kind of melting down. I feel like I've strayed from God. I feel like I can't do anything right. My kingdom's made up of your kind of people. Kingdom's made up of people like you. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek, not the fiery preachers and teachers. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are the poor, pure in heart. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, not self-righteousness, but the wholeness and richness you only find in Jesus. Blessed are the peacemakers. See, it's as if Jesus is saying, just so you guys know, my kingdom is made up of gentle, kind, meek people who bring peace with them, and they know that they don't have it all figured out because they're in touch with their own brokenness. That's who my kingdom is made of. Who'd ever expect that? And then Jesus goes on and he says, just so you know, you guys are the salt of the earth and the light of the world. You're the salt and the light. Now, Jesus didn't say, I am the light of the world. That's interesting, isn't it? He said, you. You, friends, you, church, you, my people, you are the light of the world. My dream is that my words and my way, this gospel would transform you in such a way that you would live and embody such a different and more beautiful way of living than the world around you, that people will actually notice how different and how beautiful the way that you live is. That's my dream, that you would be the light of the world, that people would look to you and say, I want that. This Jesus way of living, it's a really good way of living. It's a really good way of interacting with human beings, with my family, with my friends, in my marriage, as a single person in my dorms. This is the way of living that's just, I want it. You're the light of the world. does that describe the church today? This is Jesus' dream for the church. Then Jesus goes along and he says this really controversial, probably people took him as heretical thing. He said, I have come to fulfill the Scriptures. The Scriptures find their fulfillment in me. Do you remember this? In McKinley Park. The Scriptures, Jesus said, don't think I've come to abolish the law and the prophets, which is just the Hebrew Scriptures. I have come to fulfill them. And that is a crazy claim, that the Scriptures are incomplete without Jesus. That you don't get the fullness of truth and life in the Scriptures without Jesus. Jesus brings fulfillment and completion to the Scriptures themselves. We find fulfillment in Jesus. You want to know what the Scriptures are, how they're trying to mold us and shape us and teach us? Look at Jesus. You want to know what it looks like? What you're trying to put the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Gospels and the epistles, all of that together. And how does discipleship and kingdom living look? It looks like Jesus. And then Jesus said, he showed us this is what this fulfillment looks like. And he gave us several examples of what this fulfillment looks like. He said, you have heard it said, do not murder. You have heard it said, don't commit adultery. You've heard it said. And then he said, but I tell you. And Jesus is raising the bar consistently, because what he's doing here, what he was doing, if you remember, is raising the bar but leveling the playing field. Saying, I'm not interested in religious robots, people who are trying to just check the boxes and do the right thing because that's how I'm going to get pleasure. I'm interested in people who want to be transformed into kingdom people who are always thinking and scheming and dreaming about how to embody the kingdom of God, how to be that salt and light here on earth. Transform people who aren't trying to just check boxes, but who are living and embodying this way. Then in Matthew 6, we learned about this, what I would call just humble spirituality that Jesus is encouraging, where he's comparing and contrasting what I want from my followers, Jesus said, is kind of different than what you see in the religious leaders who love to brag, who love to put their spirituality, whether it's praying or fasting or giving, they love to put it on display. That's not the kind of spirituality Jesus says he's looking for. Jesus is looking for this humble, quiet, meek devotion. I'm going over my 7 minutes, so let me be fast. Then we get to the part where Jesus starts talking about how don't worry about what you're going to wear, what you're going to eat. Don't worry about all that stuff. Don't worry. God sees you. God knows you. And the way I've boiled this section down is Jesus is calling you to embody a non-anxious presence in a chaotic world. Jesus is calling me, he's calling you, he's calling us to embody a non-anxious presence in a chaotic world, a chaotic home, chaotic inner self. This is the way of Jesus. Jesus is calling us to embody be a non-judgmental people who are more acquainted with our own brokenness than the brokenness around us. Now that one, holy crap, if you've learned how to do that, give me some notes. This is Matthew 6. Why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye when you have a plank sitting in your own eye? Can you be, church, a non-judgmental people? I'm more aware of my own brokenness than the people and obsessed with it than I'm obsessed with the people around me. And then Jesus finishes it all off by saying, I want you to live your lives as seekers. You'll never, ever get to a point where you've got it all figured out. Never. Maybe we've lived for the last 5-10 years of our Christianity, our spiritual journey, thinking we got it figured out. I'm just kind of treading water here. Never. There's always more and further in. Live your life as a seeker. Knock and the door will be open. Keep knocking on doors. Keep asking questions. And embrace the reality that this is the good journey that we're on. And we're always learning, we're always evolving, always growing, always maturing, hopefully. Some people don't know how to do that. Religious people like to be certain. We like to have arrived. So what is it that's challenged you personally during this series? I want to just hear from a few of you. If something in particular challenged you, or you've been just noodling around, you can raise your hand, and Randy will bring a mic to you. Got Kimberly over there, Randy. And then keep raising your hand, and I'll keep track of you. Got you.
So, living in a non-anxious presence, I called Randy and Grace that Sunday. It was just a very good message. Also dealing with depression, anxiety, but we had a massive COVID outbreak at work in long-term care, like that following Monday, and we're coming to the end of it. But just really about living in non-anxious presence, especially for other people, to be that presence for other people, that just really hit home.
Yeah,
And
Kimberly.
that just really, really helped that week.
So good, Kim.
Yeah.
Kimberly works in a Jewish elderly home where there's people in their 70s, 80s, 90s, and embodying a non-anxious presence when there's a COVID outbreak happening amongst a bunch of elderly people. That's not easy, is it? Bob back there, and then we got Marianne over here. Raise your hand if you want to just share a reflection or how you've been challenged.
Jesus said a tough thing. He said, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. And I thought, oh, yeah.
No problem.
That's a tall order. And what I've come to learn is that perfection is an orientation. It's not a destination. If I told you God is in the west, so go west, let me know when you get to a place called west. Just keep moving toward God, and as long as your orientation is good, I believe that's what Jesus is saying.
That's good, Bob. Marianne, anybody else in the middle? Montavious over here?
Yes, on that same week when you talked about non-anxious present, non-judgmental way, and living life as a seeker, you also said be careful that we're being discipled by who and what we listen to. And that really convicted me. I just have been a news watcher my whole life, and I realized that I was watching newscasts 4 or 5 times a day. And I thought, wow, what am I filling myself with? And so since then, I have really cut that way back and filled myself with reading and, beautiful music and meditation on God. And so what we're being discipled by, what we listen to, goes against that non-anxious presence. It was making me really judgmental, and making me feel like, what they said on the news brought this certainty, which is just not what it's all about. So that really spoke to me, and it was transforming for me.
Good,
and
Marianne.
so,
Awesome.
Careful.
Thanks, you guys, for sharing, Montavious. If you're online, comment and share with each other, and I'll look back tonight on what you've been challenged by and learning and encouraged by. Montavious.
Yes, greetings and salutations, everybody. When he says, pray for your enemies, I'm like, no, thank you.
Right.
For that one, and I've never felt like I had an enemy before, so I'm like, I can do that when it comes time, if I ever have one. But now I feel like I'm in a place in my life where, I'm very upset with a number of people, borderline, hatred, and I'm like, I can't do this right now, Jesus. I can't pray for this person or these people because, I feel like I'm right, and I know they're wrong, and if I told the story, I feel like everybody would say, oh, yeah, you're right, Montavious, and he's asking me not to do that and, put down my self-righteousness, and no matter what I feel about this other person, I, too, was saved, when I was an enemy of somebody, namely this Lord Jesus of mine. So that's been very hard.
Yep. Loving your enemies, no big deal. That's something I forgot to include in the summary, by the way, was that, do you remember that little section where we've taken this, what I call dish rag Christianity, of turning the other cheek and giving your undergarments as well as your cloak and walking the extra mile, where actually some biblical scholars think that Jesus was turning the tables upside down and telling a marginalized, oppressed people group how to subversively stand against and subvert and protest systems of injustice and oppression. I can't go into it, but crazy stuff. Anybody else? Last chance. Lindsay. By the way, congratulations to Montavious and Allie, who just got engaged.
Awesome. So that same week that we talked about non-anxious presence, I experienced the most anxiety that I've ever felt in my life. And so things that I'm learning out of that time are ask for help, ask the people of God to pray over you, to pray over your body. And so I'm so grateful to have a community that does that and that prays over me and partners with me in weakness. And that's my sharing to you all is partner with one another, bear one another's burdens. Don't be alone in being weak, because being weak is human, and that's just totally normal. And when you're in that place, it's okay to surrender to that and surrender to that imperfection.
Yeah, so good, Lindsay. Thank you. Thanks for sharing your openly and honest, you guys. We'll cut it off there. Shmore, thanks for running around. So this morning, as Jesus is finishing up this epic sermon, we get this Sunday school story, this little parable. This is Matthew 7, verse 24. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose. Jesus is describing seasonal flooding that would happen here, where they were living in desert situations, desert areas that couldn't soak up water and get all the nutrients they could out of it, and instead it would just flood a couple times a year. The rains came down, the streams rose, and the wind blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rains came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. When Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching. If you remember in the first week, I said this teaching was just for his disciples. When Jesus goes up the hill, the disciples come with him, and he starts downloading what it looks like to be a disciple. Seems as though the crowds have kind of heard there's something really special happening, and they're kind of on the secondary, and they're outliers listening to this teaching, and they were amazed at his teaching because he taught as one who had authority and not as their teachers of the law. See, as I've been saying these last few weeks about this conclusion to the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus doesn't follow the church growth guru's rules. Jesus doesn't try to make us feel really good and send us on our way like I should do today. When I'm done with this sermon, I should wrap it up with this cute little story that's going to be really engaging and you're going to be able to identify with it, and then it's going to make you feel really good as you walk out the door because you're going to want to come back again next week, right? That's smart church growth. Jesus didn't care about that. Jesus brought some challenge to his hearers. And Jesus said, blessed are you who not hear. See, there's two people in the story, and they both hear. They're both sitting in church service, right? They're both listening to the gospel. They're both listening to Jesus' teaching. See, listening and hearing, Jesus doesn't really care so much about. It's a means to an end. See, those people who went away amazed, I often measure how good my sermon was by how many of you come up to me and be like, oh man, that was great. Good job, Randy. Thank you for that. Makes me feel good, affirms me and says I did a good job this week. Jesus sent the crowds away amazed, but I don't think he was really interested in that, because what he was interested in, it says, is blessed are you who hear these words of mine and what? Put them into practice. As Allen Iverson said, we're talking about practice. Practice. Blessed are you who hear these words of mine and put them into practice. What does that mean? It means that what we're doing here is more than just punching a time clock. Does anybody currently have had a job where you literally had a time clock, where you had to grab your card and then punch it in, and you try to get there at 7:29 if you start at 7:30, and then you can kind of, okay, all right, good. And then you punch out, you go home, you don't think about it. Those are usually those kind of jobs. We treat this like that. We should have like a big thing of time cards there for members, right? and we take our card and we thunk, and then we go sit down, or maybe even we just secretly just punch in and then punch out so it looks good. We got perfect attendance. Punch in and punch out and the job's done. What God expects of me is good to go. I haven't been to church for a really long time, and so coming to church service is a really big deal for me. And Jesus says, this stuff matters way less. This is an invitation to put into practice the stuff that we're listening to. So are you doing that? I don't have much time left. I'm just going to get right to it. I'm just asking each of you now. Do you have practices that you have in your life that bring about the life of God, that make you more aware of the presence of God on just a normal basis? Do you have any practical practices? Maybe even once upon a time you did when you were a new Christian and on fire for Jesus, right? Or do you have any practices, practical things that you have in your life, rhythms that make you more aware of the presence of the divine, or that bring about maturity and discipleship in some really fun, practical ways? For me, and these things evolve, these things change over time if you walk with Jesus for 5 years, for 10 years, 15, 30 years. For me these days, it's taking walks. And I want to say prayer walks, but I don't want to say prayer walks, because I'm not walking around my neighborhood for the most part and interceding for the people that they would meet Jesus in my neighborhood. That's all fine and good. It has a place. I've done it. Do it still sometimes every once in a while. But I'm talking about prayer walks where I talk less than I listen. I take a walk to center myself and to remind myself of the presence of Christ everywhere in my neighborhood. Sometimes I talk, sometimes I don't, but those are centering times. Is it that for you? Or is it centering prayer maybe a couple times a week for 5, 10 minutes? Really saintly people, 30 minutes centering prayer? Do you read and reflect on the Scripture and just try to take in the Scriptures and let them speak to you in different ways? Or the Psalms, do you sit with the Psalms? Do you ever fast for it? Just any length of time, just trying to remind yourself of who God is and who you are. I'm just trying to give really practical things because this is what I think Jesus is talking about. It's really practical. Are we instituting practices in our lives that actually bring us closer to Jesus? Are on this journey, do we have practices that actually bring about maturity? I'm going to show you one or two of these just because I just want to get as practical as possible. This is a book, you can put this up, Eagle, if we have the slide. This is a book called Sacred Rhythms by Ruth Haley Barton. She was at Wheaton College, but she has this thing called the Transforming Center in Illinois. I would consider her a spiritual guru. And in this book are just really good tips for, the subtitle is Arranging Our Lives for Spiritual Transformation. A book like this just gives you ways to engage into to examine myself and some prayers of examine, or some contemplative prayer times, or how to do that, or centering prayer, what that looks like, or reading the Scriptures in a more beautiful way. There's all sorts of practices in books like this. This is just one example, Sacred Rhythms. Another one that I like a lot, the name sucks, A Guide to Prayer for Ministers and Other Servants. It's like the Book of Common Prayer, but it's really tasty stuff in there. Takes you through a couple of scripture verses and gives you a couple of readings from guys like Henry Nouwen or women like Ruth Haley Barton. This one, come and take a picture of it and buy it if you want, or if you can't afford $15, you can have this one. Just grab it. I'll just leave it here. This one is not mine. Don't take it. But take a picture of it and buy it for yourself. Just things like this in our lives, practical things that bring about discipleship. Jesus, in his teaching, he's saying life is going to get you. Like floods come every year, a couple times a year. The crises will happen. The question is, will you be ready for them? Not like I'm gonna fortify my house, but what have you been doing up to that crisis moment that's going to judge how you respond in that crisis moment? Those of you who've been around Bruce City for a couple of years, I'm sorry you're going to hear this story again. But when this got real in my life, when God really taught me that, like, wow, this stuff matters. What I do in my journey with Jesus on a daily basis matters is, how long ago was it that the brain explosion? 6 years, 7 years, something like that. 7, 8 years ago, me and my wife, Sarah, we took a trip to California away from our 4 kids for the first time ever. It was amazing. It was magical. It was all that you would think a Southern California trip as a couple would be. And then my brain exploded. I was walking in Santa Monica, felt like literally my brain was going to explode out of my head. Didn't know what was happening. Couldn't look at the light. I started vomiting. It was terrible. Long story short, I wound up ambulanced over to UCLA Medical Center. They found that my brain was bleeding, and it shifted. I had a midline shift. It pushed my brain over. And I just arrived to a team of neurosurgeons who said, we might have to perform emergency brain surgery on you. So I felt like I was going to die, literally. And then I was told, you might have to have emergency brain surgery. To me, like, I translate that as, you might be dying. You might die tonight. And so as we sat in that room, in that hospital room, uncertain of what was going to happen, people asking me questions, it was pretty overwhelming. I'll never forget the peace that was in that room that my wife and I shared. I can't look at you right now because I'm going to cry. But we prayed a lot. Then we ran out of words and prayed in tongues. But we never had that moment where it was just like, why, God? We never had that moment where it's just, what's going to happen here? We just had this overwhelming sense of peace. And afterwards, I've processed that, and we processed together. I think it was the Spirit of God present in that room with us, but more than that, I think the Spirit of God told me, the reason you responded like that in that moment is because of the years of faithfulness. Now, I'm not perfect. My wife isn't either. She's way better than I am, but she's closer. But neither of us are perfect. But years of faithfulness and taking in the Scriptures, and years of committing ourselves to a people that we love and call family, and that's a church. Years of prayer and conversation about who God is and who I am in light of that, built into us into the moment where we were in crisis. It didn't feel as crazy and chaotic and anxiety-inducing as you would imagine. And I think that's what Jesus is talking about here. Crises will come in your life. If you haven't been to that point in life, just give it a few years. And I don't say that with like, I'm relishing, I can't wait for you to get to the crisis. It's just going to happen. What you do today, and then what you do tomorrow, and then what you do on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, are all telling you and pointing you in a certain direction, that will tell you how you respond in that moment of crisis, who you're surrounding yourself with. We are living in a moment of crisis, right? We have been living in a moment of crisis, and I have a bunch of friends who are pastors and church leaders. A couple of groups, and I got together with one of these groups about 6 months in. It was about September of 2020. It's about 6 or 7 months into COVID. Our worlds got turned upside down. Our churches got turned upside down. We're trying to figure out creative ways to gather. We're trying to figure out how to keep the church together. We don't know where some people have gone, all this stuff. And a leader of a big and well-respected church, a church that if you said you're part of this church, you'd be proud of yourself. Way more well-established than us. Big church. Leader of that church said, you guys, me and my staff and elders were reflecting together about our church in this last 6 months, and we just said, I'm shocked. We are shocked by the level of discipleship at our church. And it wasn't a good shock. Literally just said, we have been shocked by the level of discipleship at our church. I'm not saying this to you, friends, to try to guess what church it was so that we can point our fingers at them and think about how good we are and how undiscipled and unchrist-like they are. That's not the point of this, because we've read through Matthew 6. We know that our job isn't pointing out other churches' flaws, it's actually looking at ourselves. What is our level of discipleship at Bruce City Church? What is your level of discipleship? And when I say level of discipleship, I don't want to pretend like this is a video game. Are you growing in this good journey towards Jesus? There are ways to measure this, actually. Like, what are your conversations like with your friends and family? Have they changed and matured and grown? Or are you still having the same conversations, talking about the same stuff? Has your home church or your small group, have you grown and matured together? Or are you kind of stuck in neutral? Are you a more loving person? That's a really easy way to measure if we're growing in Jesus or not. Are you a loving person? Are you getting more and more loving and welcoming and just surprised by the way we love our enemies? Is that happening more or less in the last couple of years? Is our understanding of who God is growing and in journey, evolving and moving? And because if God is the God of the universe and the cosmos, we'll never have him figured out. So is your vision of God expanding? Or is it just kind of where you met Jesus? Stuck there. There are measurable things that we can actually look at our lives and look at our churches, look at our small groups and say, I don't think we've matured very much in the last couple of years. I don't think I've matured very much. I've been stuck in neutral and I've been content there. Pastor says we've been shocked by the level of discipleship at our church. Friends, this is Jesus saying, blessed are you not when you punch the clock. Blessed are you not when you listen to a podcast. But blessed are you when you hear that stuff and you put it into practice in your life. Jesus, you can agree with me in your inner person if you want, but I just, again, want more and more of you. All I've seen of you is beautiful and good. And then there's other stuff that I've seen that challenges me to my core. Would you help us be that kind of people, that light of the world, that salt of the earth? Would you help us embody that? Would you help us not cruise through the Sermon on the Mountain and move on, but be molded and shaped by it, be transformed? To be a church that when crisis hits, our level of discipleship is obvious by how much we care for one another and how much we care for the people around us. Would you help us be those kind of people that when crisis hits, whether it's a global pandemic or a brain bleed or a parent dying or divorce or all sorts of things, would you help us? I want to tomorrow grow closer to you, Jesus. And then Tuesday to grow closer to you and put into practice these things that can help me walk towards you in this good journey. Holy Spirit, we need you so badly. Would you come and teach us? Come and remind us of the words of Jesus. At work, while we're driving, when we're in the shower. Come and mold us and transform and disciple us. We love you, Jesus. And now, friends, let's stand and sing one more time together.
It all comes down to this. What you require of me, love my neighbor as myself, and you above all things. Act justly, love mercy, walk humbly with you, God, in all things, in all ways. Walk humbly
this prayer that's been given to us, that we would act justly, that we would love mercy, that we would walk humbly with you, our God. And I just think of how we believe those things for our walk, but we get to receive them straight from you. You are just. You are merciful. You are humble. And so, Jesus, as we close at this time too, just in this series, that we recognize what it looks like to actually sit at the feet of Jesus and say, what do you say? That you'd continue to silence all the other voices that are right in our face, that we would be able to hear you, that we would listen to you. Thank you for all you're doing. We continue to look to you. Yeah, amen.
Well, friends, we're really glad you joined us here today, especially if you're a first-timer. Please come and introduce yourself at the table on the way out. We'd really love to meet you, and we're just so grateful for all of you joining us here today. I hope there's something that stuck with you to here today. For me, it was joy is a thing. Truly. It's not just some word that we decide to recite or sing about at Christmas time, but it doesn't come easy. It comes from walking things out, because storms come. We all know that these days. So, Father, Son, and Spirit, we are just grateful for you just inhabiting this place and even daring to inhabit our hearts. Help us to walk out in ways that we seek to be practical, how you can be Lord of our lives. And I just pray that in the name of you, Father, Son, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. Pray this in your name. Amen. Thanks so much. We hope to see you on Friday at the Carol Sing out in New Berlin. Thanks.